Hello, hello. You're listening to For the Girls, Gays and Days, the podcast where two friends process their emotions concerning pop culture of note to the acronymed community. From film to television, music, and more, we're here to tell you what caught our queer eyes this week. I'm Colt, he, him.
I'm Alex, they, them. Cheers.
Welcome. This week, we're talking the indie rock supergroup boygenius, the musical comedy series Schmigadoon, crime drama Holding, and the dark comedy Swarm. To kick us off, category is music.
Yes.
Alex, take it away.
Yes, and gays, it's our time. boygenius has released what many would call the gay moment of the decade. Their new album called The Record. And to give you some context about them, as Colt mentioned, they are a supergroup consisting of Julian Baker, Phoebe Bridgers, and Lucy Dacus. They formed in 2018 and set heart to flatter by being incredibly gay and incredibly introspective. That is the point at which the two rivers of my soul converge. So they had me from hello. Before coming together to form the band, all three were critically acclaimed. Gillian Baker had Sprained Ankle, Turn Out the Lights. Phoebe Bridgers, obviously Stranger in the Alps, was what got her on the map. And Lucy Dacus's Historian was just brilliant. That's the record that has one of my favorite songs of all time on it. So I think if you liked women processing their emotions, these three women were for you.
Always do.
In what I can only describe as like when you're drunk and you're fantasizing about what could happen between members of pop culture that you enjoy. That was boygenius for me, and the three of them getting together was a brilliant moment. They took a break to do their solo projects for a while, and now they're back with, as I mentioned, The Record. It came out a few days ago. It's their first number one for any of them. It's gone straight to number one. It was released on March 31st. Rolling Stone likes it. Pitchfork in their basement, as Halsey calls it, likes it. And for me, I love it because as much as the last project that they put together really encapsulated the convergence of their three sounds, I think this record takes what was built upon and takes it to another level. So you have not only standout songs, but I think a great piece of work that flows brilliantly.
Yeah.
From opening until closing. I've had it on repeat for I think 3 hours on a loop, and you can't really, every time you listen to it, there's a new wrinkle that you missed. I really love it. And what's out now, if you like visuals, is a music video of 3 songs, $20, Emily, I'm Sorry, and True Blue, and it was directed by Kirsten Stewart. And it's sort of dreamlike, which I think is fitting for the whole record. I find it to be a very dreamy record. Flows very beautifully into each other, but each one of the songs could be a standalone on its own. What did you think of it? You've also been listening to it quite a bit.
Yeah. I've been listening to it all throughout today, much like you've been listening. It's sort of on repeat. We've had our first sort of bit of sunny weather in London, so I spent most of the day in the park just listening to it and like reading my book and just like chilling and absorbing the sun, and it just feels very like a great park tune, like a great thing to put on to like chill in the park and enjoy the sun or like enjoy a sunset. And yeah, like you're saying, like it's the unpacking of emotions, it's the processing of emotions. It's when you sort of talked about like a fantasy quality, it was like very much conjures images of a life that could be lived.
Yeah. And
even just like conjuring an image of a life being lived, and then the sort of diverging pathways that like it could go in the future. And I think it's really, they're great storytellers just as a collective, and individually, but as a collective, they just have a great storytelling quality to their music, and I really enjoy it.
It is one of those things where, like you say, storytelling, where you feel like you're in their lives, but then you also see their experiences mirrored in your own experience. Like a song like True Blue, which I'm sure is about a very specific experience, just made me think of you and friendship and somebody actually knowing your soul and sort of like knowing you better than you care to know yourself. It really like, this is an album I would rate by staring into the middle distance with a cup of coffee. And I would say I need like 4 out of 5 cups of coffee to stare into the middle distance to unpack True Blue. Emily, I'm Sorry is a great one. My mate who sometimes listens to us loves Satanist because we were talking about it, and I think there's an element of nostalgia in the whole record.
Yeah,
so for me, Satanist reminds me of like Green Day and their American Idiot album. It feels like you could put it on that album and nobody would know because it's so of the moment when we were angsty and wanted to spray paint everything and be angry at everything. But I think I really do understand how everyone has their own favorite song right now. I feel like Not Strong Enough is my favorite song, and Emily, I'm Sorry are my 2 standouts. Everybody sort of has a different thing in their life. I understand also how you can just love the whole record because it's a whole moment when you're in the park. You're listening to the whole thing as it flows. It makes me think of Bodies of Water for some reason. Like when I was listening to Letter to an Old Poet, I really felt like it was the 3 different streams of their sounds coming together in one place. They really put their whole pussies into that. Like you can feel it. It's a song where I think different personalities shine on different records. Like you can definitely feel the Phoebe Bridgers on Emily, I'm Sorry. But like Letter to an Old Poet, you really feel everybody. It's a great record. I think it will go down as one of the best records. I think it will. It's really up there. Not that their first project wasn't, amazing.
But this is their first album, no?
Yeah. I think this is the last one was like an LP. You know how like record EP, whatever, people are very specific about naming things. Yeah. And they were obviously deliberate with calling it the record. So I get that. But like that project was great, but I think this project is a step up.
It's a moment. Yeah. We literally said that at the same time. That was beautiful.
Gay rights is what that was. The little rainbow came out. Edit the rainbow in.
Just like a swing.
Shing. I'm looking at the reviews and literally everybody, like I said, even the basement that Pitchfork writes from gave it great stars. Nobody's gone lower than an 8. Okay, somebody did a 7. For me, I think it's like one of those things where you're like, oh, okay, this is, you can really feel like these people changed the landscape of what they've put themselves into, and to have a number 1 record in this economy and you're not making a TikTok song. Right, yeah. I think it's one of those things where I hope people don't just listen to it now, but maybe go back to it. For us, old is dead. So we have all these lived experiences that we can sort of project onto it. You reject the idea that your old is dead, baby? What part of you?
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. Okay. Yeah.
My bad.
Also, as a gay man, I'm fully aware that I'm elderly. Like I'm in the twilight of my years. Like I'm over the hill.
You've gone from daddy to a grandpa.
To granddaddy, yeah.
Granddaddy actually, God, what's wrong with me? That sounded appealing.
No, thank you. No.
Oh, no.
I reject that. I reject that one. I reject daddy as well. Like I have a complex around that word. I think it's
He does. You've unpacked it, but it's still relevant. But
the only one that's appropriate for that is Pedro Pascal. He's the only one who can use it. Anyone else, it just makes me cringe.
He doesn't even like it. He doesn't even seem to like it that much anymore.
No, he does. He's gotten into it.
I think back to the record. I think we call 3 of them mommy. No, but like I think
they're so young. I mean, they seem young. I don't actually know how old they are, but they seem young.
I don't think they're that much younger than us. But what I really hope this record does is make more people, especially femme-identifying people, pick up guitars. I think there's been a real move away from like the bands that make you want to start a band or at least have a creative outlet, other than YouTube and podcasting, which we do. So I know this is a self drag, but I hope it makes a lot of people pick up guitars, because it did remind me of listening to the first Nirvana record I bought and wanting to play every song. I think for a lot of people, it has that quality to it.
Right. Shall we move on from music to musicals?
Yes.
Category is television.
Yes. Tell me about it, baby.
I shall be telling you about Schmigadoon.
Schmigadoon.
It is the Apple TV musical comedy series created by Cinco Paul and Ken Dario. There's no way to know. The first season aired in 2021 and told the story of Melissa, played by Cecily Strong, and Josh, Keegan-Michael Key, a couple in a failing relationship who find themselves trapped in a magical town called Schmigadoon, where every day is a musical. The first season specifically satirized golden age musicals like Brigadoon, obviously, Oklahoma, The Music Man, and Sound of Music. I watched the first couple of episodes when they came out, and then for whatever reason, I just took a break. Like I just didn't carry on with it for a really long time. And then I have just recently caught up with it ahead of the new season.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that I did, because I had a ball. The leads are very good, but to me, the standouts are the supporting cast, including Alan Cumming, who's playing a closeted mayor, Kristen Chenoweth as a puritanical preacher's wife, and Ariana DeBose as the town school mom. The music is super catchy.
That's the gayest cast I've ever heard.
It is a very gay show, even if there's only sort of like the two gay characters in it. But it's musical theater. It's musical theater kids run wild. And the musical numbers are super catchy, and they're hysterical. And I didn't get a lot of the references because I'm not really as familiar with that particular era of musicals. I think I'd only sort of really seen The Sound of Music.
Yeah, me too.
So a lot of the rest of them, I understood the general tone and the general like vibe that they were going for, but I didn't get necessarily all of the references right away. But it didn't affect my enjoyment of the show at all, because I love that the musical genre, and also really love like joyful media, but with bitter undertones, because it definitely has that of like, it's, and I think that's sort of like one of the plot things is like, it's this beautiful veneer, but it's also like set in the golden age of musicals where it's,
racist.
Things were not great for women or for people of color or for queer people. And even in like musicals, which are incredibly gay, you still have like Alan Cumming's character, who is just has some of my favorite moments in the show. I think the one I've sent you a number of things from it. I think the first one where I was like, I'm going to like this show was there's a scene between Alan Cumming and Cecily Strong in like a forest where she's like, "Are you gay?" And he says, "Well, I try to be," and then launches into a whole thing of like gay isn't happy, but just the way he responds, "Well, I try to be," just cracked me up. I don't know what it is. And then later on in the season, he comes out by literally singing "I'm a homosexual" at a funeral. So that is delightful.
The scene that I've seen. I think
I sent you the video.
Yeah. So you, because of the way TikTok works, you sent me videos. I like the videos you sent me, and then my timeline is just comprised then of those things in that lane. So I've seen that and I loved it. And I'm a big Alan Cumming fan. Like, he is popular in the States right now because of another show that he did on Peacock. I just love the man. He never misses. He is camp to the level I aspire to be.
And he's so fun in the show. I mean, he is a supporting character and doesn't have like a huge amount of screen time. I think the weighting of the supporting cast, they very much remain supporting, but I think they just all sort of get like their moment to shine. Even people like Dove Cameron, who's sort of quite big early on in the season. People like Aaron Tveit. Yeah, Dove Cameron. Yeah.
Is she good?
She's better in the second season, I think. I think she was good for like the role she was playing. I don't think she had as much to work with the role she was playing with in the first season. But on that, the second season just dropped its first 2 episodes on Apple TV Plus this week. Yes. And it sees Melissa and Josh dissatisfied with the real world after having gotten out of Schmigadoon, getting back to their real lives. A couple of years later, they're dissatisfied. They attempt to return to Schmigadoon, but find themselves in Chicago.
Yes. Okay. Does that mean what I think it means?
Satirizes more musicals I'm familiar with, and I think you will be familiar with as well, including Chicago, Cabaret, and Sweeney Todd.
Cabaret. Yeah. Can I just?
So say- now we have Dove Cameron is now playing like Sally Bowles essentially. Oh. Yeah. Think of it. She does very well. Good. I promise you, she's very good in this. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna trust you.
And then we have just like what's her name? Jane Krakowski. You have Jane Krakowski playing like a gender flipped version of the lawyer from Chicago.
I love that woman.
Yeah. You have Alan Cumming and Kristen Chenoweth playing versions of Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett. Haven't gotten to that yet in the first 2 episodes. They sort of have an appearance, but we haven't like delved into it yet. I think the first couple of episodes have been more Chicago Cabaret heavy, but I'm loving this new season. I'm glad that I caught up with it because it was a great show, but I'm also really glad that I caught up with it because I now get to see musicals I'm more familiar with.
So do you have to have seen the first season to get to this season?
You don't have to, but you should.
Oh, because this sounds like
it's short. It's a short season.
Oklahoma. I know
it's
Oklahoma.
A short season. It's honestly short episodes. Every episode's a half hour, under half hour. I think it's only like an 8-episode season. Like it's not long. It could even be a 6-episode season if I should check that.
That's British.
This is the kind of information. 6 episodes, 6-episode season, half hour each. You could blow through it in an afternoon, which is basically what I did when I caught up with it. Is I sort of.
Have you heard about my blowing skills? Are they good?
I haven't had any complaints. Yeah. But yeah, I think the first season is worth watching because even if, like I said, I didn't necessarily understand the musicals references, but the musical numbers themselves were a lot of fun. Yeah, I think it won an Emmy for like the music, or at least it got nominated for one of the songs.
Well, I mean, I think it's just great that it exists.
It won Best Original Music and Lyrics for. I mean, I think it's not the best song in the season, but it won for a song called Corn Puddin'. Yeah.
My drag name. No, but so do you think if you liked Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, you would like this show? Because it sounds like it blends that sweet and sour with a musical.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's quite a different tone. It's a lot more sort of candy colored than Crazy Ex ever was. When I say there's like bitter undertones, they're very much in like subtext, but like visually, it's like candy colored, candy coated, just. Yeah, it's so much fun. It's a delightful show.
I trust you, so I'm into that. I'm very into that.
Right. On that note, we will take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Adios.
And we're back. The category remains television. Alex, what do you have next?
Hey, Goyles, I'm back. So I'm back again with a British detective show. What am I
Which means there's been a murder.
There's been a murder in a town so small you could fart and miss it. Let me introduce you to Holding. It's a 4-part television series based on the debut novel of the same name by the king himself, Graham Norton. Graham Norton of talk show fame is also an incredibly talented writer, so he can fuck off and die. No, I am kidding. It's brilliant. It's so funny. Yeah. It takes the idea of which a lot of writers enjoy, a town where nothing happens in the middle of nowhere. There is a murder. But what's interesting about this murder is it happened decades ago. And you have a gentleman in this town who's essentially run away to be a policeman here and hope that nothing happens. He wants to eat copious amounts and just not worry too much if something happens. But it's Conleith Hill as PJ Collins, which I'm not. I'm sure I'm massacring that.
That's absolutely the pronunciations.
And fans of Dairy Girls will know Siobhan McSweeney. If I'm not mistaken,
You're
she
correct.
puts her whole pussy into this. She just, brilliant, top to bottom, so good. What I really enjoyed about this show is, other than it being short and sweet and funny, is that it's an examination of what happens when you don't deal with your shit. Obviously, we have the buried body that's discovered decades later, and that's the literal version of it. But I think what we see in the lead of Peach, is somebody who has to come to terms with who he is and what he's been through. And I think people who really enjoyed Recipes for Love and Murder, which is an Acorn show, this is a BritBox show, people who enjoy Agatha Christie classics. And other than that, I think it's not really a classic murder mystery. It's
For me, having only just watched the first episode so far, I sort of, my immediate sort of snap judgment on it was that it felt like Broadchurch, but not bleak.
Yeah.
There's still murder in it, but it didn't make me like have to take a break after to go, oh gosh.
Oh gosh.
But it still had that sort of very slice of a specific location. I think it was very, very good in setting up its location, populating it with very distinct locals who have like very specific character traits. You have the sort of drunk mother, you've got the nosy, aggressive neighbor lady who wears very bright colors and gets in everybody's business about everything.
She's fun though. I mean, she is me.
It's also fairly standard but incredibly entertaining. Yes, yeah, we have lovely lesbians. We lesbians.
We lesbians who are complete messes. And my wife described it really well. She said if Mayor of Easttown was in Ireland, this is the experience you'd get.
But again, not as bleak.
Not as bleak.
I mean, I'm saying this having only watched the first episodes. I don't know if it gets bleaker as the show goes on, but like the first episode was not as bleak as definitely the marketing, like the poster would suggest. If you look at the poster, you're like, oh God, this is going to be heavy. And then you watch it and I'm like, oh God, bright colors. Like people are having a laugh. Colors. Like there's humor. Like there's like we mistake someone. We mistake someone having a snack for having a wank. Like it's
That's brilliant. That was really brilliant. I think what I really liked about it too was the fact that everybody got a chance to shine, and it made you feel smart watching it, which I love it when TV shows do that. I enjoyed the soundtrack. I enjoyed the mise en scene, which I know I don't talk about often in these murder mysteries, but this one, I think, really, the small details shine through and they make things feel more complete. So you do feel like you're in a farm in the middle of nowhere. I think if you took this and put it in the Karoo, which I know, or you took this and put this on a farm in maybe not Harare, but Ohio, I don't know, somewhere a little bit more off the beaten track, you might see it there too. It reminded me of Ladies' #1 Detective Agency. Alexander McCall, that definitely has turns of that. I can't believe Graham Norton was so good at writing twists and turns. It's quite upsetting. And so good at talking about why people do the things that they do. I think it's not the type of show that if you enjoy darker shows you might enjoy, or you might not end up giving it a chance. It does get a bit darker, especially in the middle. But in a way that you don't expect. You're sort of sitting there laughing at a character you would dismiss out of hand most of the time. And then she says something that devastates you and you don't see coming, which I think is something that, you can't really do unless you set the scene of everybody feeling comfortable and feeling like, oh, this is so light, so silly. And then you kind of give them the big bash over the head. There's a lot of things I loved about it. And I think it's one of my favorite shows I've watched this year. It definitely was a good palate cleanser after I watched more heavy things. I would highly recommend it. BritBox has a free trial, I think, if you're in the States.
And it's on ITV. ITV in the UK.
ITV in the UK.
So I'm enjoying it so far. I will definitely be continuing, especially knowing there's only 4 episodes. Like I will probably finish that tonight. Yeah.
It's one of those things where I feel like you would miss it. It didn't have a lot of press around it, at least in my neck.
I've seen nothing.
But I think they missed out on a big opportunity because a lot of people will like it. It's not, when I say it's not like other murder mystery shows, it's not ground you've trodden before and gotten over, which I think is why people enjoy. There's a lot of shows that try and tell a murder mystery in a small town, but you want to try and tell it in a new way, and they end up telling it in a new way.
Yeah.
And
anyway, I'm very much looking forward to see how this turns out.
Watch it. Get a girl.
Right, moving on to the next television show. We're staying very much in TV land today, apart from a brief foray into music. We're moving on to Swarm. Swarm is the prime original series created by Donald Glover and Janine Neighbors. I think that's how it's pronounced. Again, I should have looked up pronunciations on this episode. I normally do. I didn't this time.
I looked up Conleith. I have no idea how to say it.
Anyway, this show is hard to put in a specific genre box. It is a satirical sort of dark comedy, but it's also a horror. It's also a thriller. The show follows a super fan named Dre, played by Dominique Fishback, who is obsessed with Naja, a stand-in for Beyonce.
Yes.
And we basically see Dre come untethered and become a serial killer targeting Twitter trolls who have negative things to say about Naja. This show is wild. I don't think it's for everyone. I will say that right off the bat. I don't know if this is a show that everyone's going to be able to get into. If you think about some of the most bizarre episodes of Atlanta and then add murder and gore, that's kind of the vibe of this show. It's quite trippy. It's also quite like slice of life in moments, but then it gets quite trippy and quite like violent, and there's a lot of sort of like fantasy sort of sequences. You're never really sure what's real, what isn't.
Nightmare-y. When I watched it, I watched a bit. I found it to be like a nightmare. And I ended up dreaming about it after I watched it. Not in a good way.
Oh, God. You see, I mean, I might be a bit desensitized to horror because it didn't necessarily scare me. I just was watching
it didn't scare me. It just sat with me like a bad current.
Okay, I'll give it that. I think. Yeah. I mean, it's only 7 episodes long, and they're mostly short episodes again. But for me, my personal standout episodes were episode 4, Running Scared, which features Billie Eilish as an enigmatic leader of a female empowerment cult.
Yeah.
It's sort of her first like big acting role, and she's so good.
She's good.
She's so good.
She's actually good.
8 left no crumbs. Like
rude.
The therapy session scenes with her, where she's like snapping and like, tell me what's your name. Did you hurt somebody? And then she's like smiling and just like there's intense close-ups, and she's so good. And because a lot of the episodes are a bit like standalone-y, I think it's also like, it's why I've sort of been saying to people like, okay, I understand the first like 2 episodes. First episode is hard to get through, especially if you're not like a big horror or thriller fan. It's a bit hard to get through. And then I'm just like, just try this episode, because this episode is so good. And I think there's another episode which I think you might like as well, which is episode 6, Fallen Through the Cracks, which is essentially a true crime doc of what we've seen so far on the season.
Oh, that's interesting.
Of like an investigator putting together these pieces, and it's so entertaining. And yeah. And then the last episode is just very gay. But spoiler alert, it does not have a happy ending. Like I almost messaged you when I was watching it. You're like, Alex, it gets really gay. And then all the wheels come off, and I'm like, oh no, maybe maybe not.
What I
It's
liked
still
about
very
it was
gay.
how,
It's still very
yeah,
gay, but it's
I
just gets
mean,
it's bleak. It's a bleak show. But also, I think I've seen a lot of people sort of refer to it as sort of the antithesis of Poker Face, which was a show where you have
yeah,
Natasha Lyonne solving a crime in every episode, and it's
yeah,
very ultimately uplifting
mm,
stories. Whereas this one is she's committing a crime in every episode.
she is. She is,
Most of the show draws actual inspiration from actual crimes. Like I didn't know this, but sort of looking into it more sort of after the show, a lot of these crimes happened. They weren't necessarily committed by all the same person. They were all committed by different people, I think. But Donald Glover and Janine Neighbors were able to draw inspiration from like real life crimes and from Beyonce reference. The Beyonce references are so glaring. Like there's
yeah.
it's
I
very
would
clearly a
sue them if I
Beyonce
was her.
stand-in.
Like that, it's
Uh,
pretty. Yeah, it's
I'm pretty
pretty.
sure I'm sure I read somewhere that she sort of gave her okay to it. Like
That is a woman confident in her aura. But the episode 4 for me was a
yeah.
direct line between Nexium,
Oh, fully.
and what this is. I say it's creative. I can see where all the strings tie that what they were
Yeah.
trying to do. But at the same time, it's not something that's currently on TV.
Yeah,
It's
it's very
wonderful to
unique.
watch.
Yeah.
Fishback's brilliant. Billie
So good.
Eilish is unfortunately incredible.
I think if you see the thing is I think this might be a limited series, so I don't think this could go into like the drama category. If it were, I think Billie Eilish would absolutely get into a guest actress category, but because I think it's the limited series, they don't really do that. But I think Dominique Fishback will absolutely get nominated for this, or she should anyway. Like I think it would be a crime, pun intended, if she were to not get nominated for this role because she's so fucking good, Alex.
Really, she's good.
Yeah.
She's very good. From what I've seen of the show, I think Dominic Fishback is brilliant. I think where she really shines is the moments where you can see the person behind the obsessive that is Drake. There is obviously we've all done a bit of reading about this. There is a little quote from Donald Glover where he says he didn't really want humanity in Dre. He wanted to just be like a dog.
In moments, I for sure see that in the performance of when she sort of loses herself in the obsession. I think there is a very sort of animalistic nature, but I think, as you say, like it's the ability to perform the humanity in the quieter moments, and then still give that raw animalistic nature when she loses control. That is just very powerful.
It is really powerful. I don't know if it's like one of the shows that I would want to watch repeatedly. No. I don't know if it's something I'd go back to.
I think I'll go back to like a few of the episodes. Like I'll go back to that Billie Eilish episode. I'll go back to the true crime doc, and I'll probably go back to the finale as well. I think there's something really interesting with the finale and with the sort of the gay story, the gay love story that goes horribly wrong. And there's something about, there's a lot of playing around with gender that Dominique Fishback does with Dre's character in that specific episode, and sort of that little bit of a non-binary vibe, which was really, really interesting to see, given like the other places the character had been throughout the season. I thought that was really interesting. So I think those are episodes that I'll probably revisit, but as a whole, there's some episodes I don't necessarily want to watch again.
I think
the first episode was I was just, if
you messaged me and you said it was a bit rough.
I was like, you're gonna hate this show. In that first episode, I'm like, you're gonna fucking hate this show, and I wasn't sure I was gonna watch. But then I got to the end of it, and I'm like, I need to know what happens, though. I need to know where this goes, and because it was so short that I just sort of breezed through. I think another like 3 episodes after that. Like I got up to like the Billie Eilish episode, and then I was like, this is so fucking good. I'm glad that I stuck with it to this episode, but I absolutely couldn't recommend it to everybody. Is one thing. Like I've been saying this to people when I've sort of been talking about it in my everyday life, and I'm like, I've been watching the show. It's wild. I think it's great. I don't know if you'll like it. I'm telling you that I liked it, but I don't know if everybody will. And that's fine. Not every piece of media everyone needs to love. And I think I had similar sort of feelings to it that I did initially with like The Power of the Dog when that came out. Like I sort of watched it. And again, I think I remember saying it like, I don't know if I liked it. I remember saying that to you when I first watched Power of the Dog. I'm like, I don't know if I like this, but it's good. And then I came to really love that film after watching it a few more times. And I think there's parts of the show that I really like towards some of the other episodes. But yeah,
I get that. I think sometimes people forget when they're critiquing this on Twitter in like a flippant comment that a show like Swarm
quite ironic
is a piece of art. And it's like when you go to an art museum and some pieces really disgust
sometimes
you.
Art's meant to challenge you.
Yeah, and some pieces really upset you. Like,
yeah,
I think it's the nature of this. I do understand. I don't think Donald Glover meant to have a conversation about his portrayal of Black women and how he doesn't give them a lot of space for humanity. I don't think he meant for that conversation to happen, but the best conversations about art happen when the artist doesn't foresee them. So I think it is worth to chew on about it. I also
think intentional or not, there is a lot of humanity in this character. And I think
Dominic Fishback really just kind of,
it's also a great indicator of art doesn't happen a lot of the time with just one person.
Yeah, it's
especially in film and television. Like you're in a collaborative space, especially television, because Donald Glover was not the only person writing on the show. He's not the only creator,
and he's not the only person who brought it to fruition. I think.
Yeah.
That is what's so great about it. And we all know, and I'm talking about Tyler Perry here, I'm not even going to make a joke about it. Like, we all know sometimes when somebody's a bit too focused on one viewpoint and it's their viewpoint. I think when more people kind of get to talk about stuff and unpack stuff, the piece becomes more interesting. And I think that is what this show is. It has layers to it. It has depth to it, but it's also just like meant to be visceral.
And it's been able to even create memes out of it. Like as much as it's like a challenging show, it's also produced memes. So like,
I've seen funerals produce memes though. Gays are we're an issue. But I do think it's great. I still can't believe Beyonce said, yep, seems accurate. That's really what I don't even know.
Don't quote me on that. I don't know if that was a thing that happened, but I can't imagine like I've said, like you said, if anyone on her team has watched this, I'm sure they would have been like,
unless she knows more than we do.
Because
she's just like, yeah, that was that one bitch.
They literally recreated the elevator CCTV situation with Solange and Jay. Recreate that in the show. There's a whole bunch of other references and like a handful of the stuff. Like I said, most of the stuff draws from stuff that actually happened. It wasn't all one person, but fascinating show.
Fascinating. Interesting.
Not for everybody, and that's fine.
No.
And on that note, we're out of time. Thank you so much for watching. Go stream boygenius, the record, wherever you get your music from. Go watch Schmigadoon on Apple TV Plus. Go watch
Schmigadoo. Schmiga get it.
Go watch Holding on BritBox or ITV, and watch Swarm on Prime if you have a strong stomach. If you want to follow us on socials, we are at girlsgaysdays_pod on Instagram and TikTok. Video versions of this podcast will be available on YouTube.
And join us again next time for another sip of queer culture. Here's to the gays.
Cheers.
Cheers, my darling.
I'll drink to that.
Do I look cute through this lens?
It's interesting. It is.
This is art. This is a Donald Glover film.
Yeah.